its imposing exterior dominates the landscape. And its magnificent halls, intricate courtyards, and jewelled chambers echo with the glory of its royal past. The walls whisper stories of romance and adventure, of powerful kings and court intrigues, of queens and courtesans, and of treachery and rebellion. The Lahore Fort owes its splendor to the greatest of Mughal emperors, to Akbar, who built it, and to Jahangir and Shah Jahan, who added to it and raised it to the pinnacle of its glory. Intricately laid courtyards of smooth stone connected the arched audience halls. Columned walkways provided relief from the hot sun, and trees of cypress were reflected in pools of crystal clear water. In these gardens, the ladies of the harem could walk, cooled by the breezes from the nearby river. The Hathi Paun, with gently rising steps, allowed elephants to walk up, and the Mughal nobility to dismount within the safety of the fort walls.
Lahore Fort and its present form and shape in this brick masonry work was done during Akbar's time when he moved his capital to Lahore for good 13 long years. In order to secure the Lahore Fort from the onslaught of the rebellions and wars, this legendary wall was constructed 17 meters high and more than 450 meters in length.
The wall is richly decorated with mosaics. Elephant processions are followed by horsemen and foot soldiers. There are camel fights and lion hunts. And on the arches, you can see winged angels.
So the fact that the Islamic rulers, the Mughal emperors, used a lot of imagery, this itself showed that they were not bound by this kind of interpretation of their religion, that imagery cannot be used in the art form.
The walls enclose a virtual city with halls and gardens, a mosque, sleeping chambers, and baths, stables, and kitchens. All that a royal family could possibly need. The ancient Masjidi gate was Akbar's entrance to the fort. Over time, he built impressive palaces, courtyards, and grand halls, decorated in places with Hindu motifs. Akbar would receive the nobles of his empire and meet with his advisors in the Daulat Khana Khas Am. This is where great battles were planned and treaties made. It faces a tranquil garden with cooling water trickling from a series of fountains. Akbar laid out this elegant quadrangle, but it was his son Jahangir who completed it. Above the Daulat Khana is a large apartment, sumptuously decorated, the walls painted with flowers and typical Persian motifs. Jahangir, who depended heavily on the advice of his Persian empress Nur Jahan, had this series of chambers built for her. Unseen, she observed the affairs of state from here and quietly steered her husband's hand. Her suspected intrigues became a serious cause for dissent and eventually even rebellion. On the other side of the apartment, a royal balcony overlooked a public ground. In keeping with Hindu tradition, early every morning the emperor would show himself to his subjects here in the Jharoka-e-Darshan. Among all this splendor, there was little room for the common man until Shah Jahan, Akbar's grandson, became emperor. The Divani arm in front of the Jharoka was built by him. Here the people could see the emperor and air their grievances. Gathering below the balcony, the starving people of Lahore pleaded for Shah Jahan's help during the famine of 1641. Shah Jahan convened his court here every day, beginning with an elaborate ceremony. As he took his seat, the royal drums would strike up a military march, and a glittering parade of elephants, horses, and men in shining armor passed before the emperor. Being a devout Muslim, Shah Jahan added the only mosque that sits within the walls of the fort. The Moti Masjid, made entirely of white marble, sits like a polished pearl in a secluded corner. Shah Jahan was responsible for many of the fort's most exceptional treasures, and his reign was considered the golden age of Mughal architecture.
This palace, the Palace of Mirrors, or the Sheesh Mahal, is the most outstanding contribution of Shah Jahan to the Lahore Fort. This pavilion was made of pure white marble, and it is surrounded by these mirrors which were brought from Syria, and it is studded with semi-precious stones and inlay work and gilt work and some beautiful figures and mosaic.
And it was once home to an even more spectacular gem. When Maharaja Ranjit Singh occupied Lahore in 1799, the Sheesh Mahal became home to both the Maharaja and to his prized possession, the Koh-i-Noor diamond. It was also in this royal hall that the sovereignty of the Punjab was ceded by the successors of Ranjit Singh to the English Queen. The Sikhs lost not only Punjab, but the priceless gem as well when it was sent to England, eventually becoming part of the Queen's regalia. But during the 40 years that Ranjit Singh ruled from the fort, he brought back some of the grandeur it had known in Mughal times. The 3 Sikh lords of Lahore left their mark on the fort, adding a haveli here and a temple there. And sitting just outside the walls of the fort, the most magnificent Sikh structure of all, the tomb of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. "7 kilometers from the fort is another of Shah Jahan's great legacies, the Shalimar Gardens. Coming upon this oasis in the midst of a dry, flat landscape must have been a magical experience. The three broad terraces descend down to the floodplain, encompassing the 410 fountains, vast pools, and lushly planted gardens. The elegant pavilions and garden designs draw on Persian influences, meshed with medieval Islamic garden traditions. These sites are an exceptional testament to the Mughal civilization at the height of its artistic accomplishments in the 16th and 17th centuries. And the splendid Sikh structures are also an integral part of the history of Lahore.
The sad thing is that over the years, these treasures have suffered a great deal of degradation. But now we are taking care of this. Together with the Agha Trust for Culture, we are working on documenting the picture wall, followed by its restoration. The Sheesh Mahal, its rooftop, which was caving in, has been restored. We are also working on the chambers of the Jahangir, where the restoration work is taking place.
These treasures are part of Pakistan's heritage, a multicultural heritage that spans the centuries, from the original Hindu and Buddhist inhabitants through waves of Muslim and Sikh invasions and conquests. They hold the key to the history of this land and the ancestry of its people. But they also belong to the rest of the world as a record of human civilization. It is our responsibility to preserve them for the benefit of future generations, so that they too can take a glimpse into their past.